Welcome back, all social studies secondary teachers, to our 25-26 instructional pre-planning session year at a glance. So happy to have you all on board today. I do want to ask you to take a moment to cozy up with your team or all of your social studies teachers. This is probably best completed if you do it with a team where you all can stop, ask questions, especially if you have new teachers on board. They can stop and ask questions. You all can collaborate, maybe jot down any questions you have for me, and create some clarity around the expectations for this year. So, I want to talk about our goal for this year for social studies, specifically in DeKalb. This goal will take us through the entire year, and we'll more than likely continue on into the next year as we continue to really look at creating this as a norm for instruction. But for DeKalb County Social Studies this year, our goal is to empower students to become critical thinkers and active citizens through inquiry based, literacy driven social studies instruction that is grounded in the C3 framework. And if any of you are new to the C3 framework, we will be talking about that a little bit later on. But what I do want you to focus on primarily is this critical thinking and active citizens, and again, highlighting inquiry based as well as literacy driven. We're going to talk a lot about literacy this year. So that's our goal for social studies in DeKalb this year. I now want to talk to you about this goal in terms of our arc of learning. Every content area has created an arc of learning with that goal in mind. And again, here's a reminder of what our goal is. And to get to our goal, we're going to have three buckets. Sometimes we call this the three large rocks. We're going to call ours the three buckets. And here they are. And those buckets are as follows. We're going to first look at literacy as the gateway to inquiry. We're going to then look at building knowledge through disciplinary literacy, and then communicating understanding with civic purpose. And so before I move forward, just kind of want you to, maybe think about with your team before you look. What does that look like? What do you think based on those descriptions? They're pretty high level, right? Kind of broad. But what do you think that that would look like in terms of instruction in your building? So I just give you, a few moments. You can even pause and think about that. One of the things I want to note is that the through line for our entire arc of learning is going to be literacy. Literacy is going to drive all of our big buckets to get to our major goal. And so let's look at what instructional practices are really embedded in these three large buckets. So, in terms of literacy as the gateway to inquiry, this could look like you conducting read alouds, right? And close reading of social studies content. And yes, we want to see read alouds in secondary. It's not just an elementary thing. We want students to be read to so that you can demonstrate what that looks like in terms of your intonation, how you stop at certain punctuation marks, how you read for understanding, modeling how you think through certain texts that you read so you can show students how they should be thinking about reading text. Also, that could look like text dependent questioning, vocabulary development in context, and then asking and refining inquiry questions using informational sources. For bucket two, building knowledge through disciplinary literacy, this is your students annotating primary and secondary sources. They can be comparing perspectives across documents. They're also collaborating and having academic discourse and also evidence-based discussions. And they're also completing graphic organizers for disciplinary thinking where they're having to work through cause and effect, or they're having to sequence events or doing a map analysis. And then lastly, for bucket three, they are communicating understanding with civic purpose. So they're maybe writing an opinion or argumentative piece based on that inquiry at the beginning of the unit. They could be creating a multimedia presentation or infographics, a political cartoon, a podcast, a mock Instagram post. They could also be sharing projects or proposals that they want to come up with to address some type of real world issue that's connected to a standard. And they could also be engaging in some type of civic simulation where they're looking at voting or they're looking at addressing a voting crisis and disparities or service learning experiences. And so now I want to move to the marginalization of social studies. This is a graphic that comes from a study that was conducted a few years ago. And I just want you to take a moment and think about what it is that you just kind of notice as you're looking through this graphic. What stands out to you almost immediately? And for me, it's really what I note on this particular slide, where you notice in the right corner, it says a few really poignant things here. First and foremost, that content knowledge makes weak readers better readers. And they go on to say that reading assessments require background knowledge from social studies disciplines like civics, economics, geography, and history. Well, we know all of our state standards cover either civics, economics, geography, or history. And how ironic that our state tests are rooted in background knowledge from these disciplines. It also says that poor readers with strong background knowledge display better reading comprehension than strong readers with low background knowledge. And then from this study, they found that second graders who had 60 lessons of literacy rich social studies instruction scored 23% higher on reading assessments. So stop and talk to your group about how this particular study impacts how you think about literacy and social studies and the impact of social studies on reading achievement and growth in terms of an outcome. This quote, social studies, when taught well, is not content delivery. It's an engine for civic literacy and reading achievement. Truly sums up our arc of learning as well as the C3 framework and what that looks like in action. This quote truly embodies what we want the goal to be for social studies in DeKalb County School District now and going forward as we continue to see growth and achievement across the district. And again, I love this idea of social studies being an engine for this civic literacy and for reading achievement. By now, many of you are either familiar or have at least heard of or seen the College Career and Civic Life Framework or C3 framework for social studies state standards. One of the things I want to note is that this is not a framework just for DeKalb. This is a framework that is nationally adopted. So nationwide, we're seeing this framework used in social studies instruction. And there is a very descriptive PDF that you can find if you just Google the C3 framework. You'll find that this particular document that was created um, truly explains the purpose and the creation of the C3 framework, as well as goes into depth of each dimension and how they are to be taught. But we are going to do a high level preview of that today and an overview of what that's supposed to look like in our instruction here in DeKalb. The C3 framework has 4 dimensions, and you'll notice this through line, which is the inquiry arc, which essentially just is telling us that inquiry really drives this entire framework. And I'll note that this framework is to be used in instruction for every single time we teach. Okay, so this is not a framework that we just kind of use here and there. It is a framework that we are asking that is being considered in instruction for everyday use. And so when we think about that, well, what does that look like for our classrooms and instruction? One of the things I want you to think of is this framework as if it's a lesson plan. And we know that traditionally our lesson plans have three parts, and this here has four dimensions. Well, let's break this down a little bit more. Dimension one is more of our opening. Dimension two and three, we can place in our work period. And dimension four is our closing. In dimension one, students are provided with some type of question. And this typically sets the stage for what they're expected to learn. And this question is usually what we call a compelling question. And these questions really engage our students and give them an opportunity to be curious about what they're going to learn. Most notably, these compelling questions are based on the standard and the expectation of the standard. I'll give an example of a lower grade just for you to get an idea of what is to be expected. If our students in third and second grade are learning about government and they're learning about the governor and the mayor and the president, instead of asking what is the leader of the state or what is the leader of the country, we might ask a compelling question that says, does it matter how leaders are chosen? And this question really gives students an opportunity to choose a side. Yes, it does matter, or no, it doesn't matter. Either way, students will be challenged to provide evidence to support their conclusion in dimension four, and that evidence will come from what they gather in dimensions two and three. So, based on that same compelling question, how are leaders chosen? Now in dimension two, I'm really diving into the expectation of the standard, and more than likely that is a civic standard, but I might look through a geography lens or history lens or economics lens. That's how I might present the information to my students. I'm going to give them an opportunity now to read texts that cover that standard, informational texts. I'm going to give them opportunities to examine certain images and start to get a little bit of an idea of some of the primary sources that I'm going to put before them for them to really do some analyzing. So now in dimension three, my students have some background knowledge that they've gotten from dimension two with the text that I've had them read and I've exposed them to. And I've given them a lot of the context for the content. And now in dimension three, I want to give them an opportunity to really focus on how they're going to answer this question. And to do that, I'm going to give them some primary and secondary sources that they're going to have to analyze. And they're going to have to begin to develop some type of claim as to what the correct answer is based on the evidence that they see before them. I want to note that with Dimension 4, this isn't something that will be a end all be all on the first day. Dimension 4 is a gradual, step by step process that students will have a formal conclusion for by the end of the unit, so to speak. But along the way, I will be getting at the closing some type of checkpoint, some type of formative assessment, just to see where they are in their thinking based on their evidence. So I do want them to begin to maybe create a small writing piece, whether it's a sentence or two, or I do want them to create a quote, or I do want them to write a letter to maybe one of the figures that they're studying, just to kind of understand where they are in their thinking based on dimensions two and three that we have been involved with. And then by the end of the unit, when they're communicating their conclusion, that could look something like a debate amongst the class. It could look like something of a presentation that they create in a PowerPoint or a Prezi. It could look like a podcast or a TED Talk that they create, to really be a culminating experience to where they have informed conclusions based on all of the evidence that they've collected from dimension 2 and 3. And they're finally answering the question from dimension 1 by completing one of those types of tasks. So essentially, when we think about the expectation of the year, I want to put it very simply and just say we're looking at inquiry constantly, us asking the students questions, them asking us questions, and also them asking their peers questions about what it is they think is happening, what they are wondering, what they expect will happen, what they are comparing. We want the inquiry to be driving their thinking and helping them to think as critically as possible. And we also want to focus on literacy, how much they're reading and they're writing, and how much they're listening and speaking to one another. And then we're really ultimately looking for the student engagement piece. How engaged are they in their learning, in their process of going from dimension 1 to dimension 4 with this inquiry and literacy embedded? So there are several best practices for social studies. We do have several that we want to focus on, for DeKalb, that a lot of our PLs cover, and we want to make sure that we master those as a district and we're all talking the same language, with all of our students across the district. And so these are truly our instructional expectations for the year, and we would expect to see these on a regular basis. And that includes lessons that are centered on a compelling question and then those supporting questions that will guide them to answering the compelling question. Also, we want to see students analyzing and evaluating a variety of primary and secondary sources. So in classrooms, students will, yes, have opportunities to take notes and to do some of these other practices that you might have. But a lot of what we should see is them interacting with primary and secondary sources, either, by themselves or with a group. We also want to see our students focusing on our writing strategies like Powtree and Raft. And then we also want to see our thinking routines like See, Think, Wonder. And so now in the subsequent slides, I'll go through each of those best practices and discuss some of them and how that will look in instructional time. Let's first start with compelling and supporting questions. Many of you have seen this slide before, and I just want to continue to show it just so we really have a clear understanding of, first and foremost, what compelling questions are and maybe what they aren't. And also, I'd like to encourage you to really start practicing creating your own compelling questions and kind of using these, as a little bit of an example as you plan your own. So I'll pose 2 questions, and you and your team decide which one is more compelling or not. And it shouldn't be too difficult, but I do want you to also notice what the commonality is for all of the compelling questions. So, first, what was the civil rights movement, or was the civil rights movement successful? What was the American Revolution? Was the American Revolution revolutionary? How are leaders chosen? Or does it matter how leaders are chosen? And what are needs and wants? Or can we get everything we need and want? And so hopefully you've noticed that the second question for each one is the more compelling question or is the compelling question. And often when I ask participants in PL what makes the second one more compelling, I'll hear things like students really have to grapple with that question, or it's open-ended, or it really challenges students to think critically, and it requires them to use some of their prior knowledge. And so we really want to look at these questions as an opportunity for multiple perspectives or debate. And so often with compelling questions, you can either say yes or no. And what's great about that is if I can say yes or no, that means I can provide some evidence and I can debate based on that evidence. And so when you get ready to develop your compelling questions, just think about, am I allowing students the opportunity to give me a yes or no? Um, and that can be open-ended, right? Where I'm asking them to provide me with some sort of evidence. So after I introduce this slide, I would like for you and your team to scan the QR code and pull up this article called Questions That Compel and Support. And I love this article because it really does give a finite answer as to what a compelling question is, what a supporting question is, how they work together in instruction, how you can create them, and how you can support students as they learn with compelling and supporting questions. So take a moment, and it's pretty brief. Read or skim through this article and then discuss briefly with your team. Now that you've read the article, I want you to consider some of these questions. What is the main difference between a compelling and a supporting question? How does scaffolding support teaching through compelling questions? And what are some ways that you and your team can work together to develop compelling questions? Let's move on to analyzing primary sources. As we know, primary sources are the foundation for social studies instruction and ensuring that our students are thinking critically and able to provide evidence-based claims. And so we want to think about some ways that we can really encourage our students to engage in social studies through primary sources. One idea is to create stations where you have multiple um, primary sources throughout the room, and students can go to different stations and are responsible for analyzing those particular sources, maybe asking questions. Maybe they do a gallery walk, they're on the wall and they put post-it notes with questions they have. Or maybe those post-it notes have statements on them, and other classmates go around and ask questions about those statements. And other students can respond, so on and so forth. Another idea is to create sets where students have a set that is alike, but maybe um, different in nature. If you look at the bottom left, you'll see that there's a photo, a map, a letter, etc. That can be a set where students have to analyze that entire set and make a claim or create a claim based on that set. Moving on to writing strategies. One of the writing strategies that we want to work on in our classrooms as a best practice is the raft writing strategy. Raft truly helps them understand their role as writers, the audience they will address, the varied format for writing, and the topic that they'll be writing about. So, for example, you can see in the bottom left, the R stands for the role. Who are they as a writer? Are they a campaign manager? Are they an advertiser? Are they a news article historian? Who are they? And then for the A in the audience, who are they writing this for? Is it a politician? Is it an advocacy group? Is it the Southern population? Who are they writing this for? And then moving on into the F, what's the format? Is this in the form of a letter? Is it in the form of a scholarly article? Is it in the form of a comic strip or a slogan or a caption for an Instagram post? And then lastly, topic. What is this about? What are they trying to get the audience to do? Another powerful writing strategy that we use is called POW tree. And POW tree is more of an organizational method to assist our students in writing very clear and organized paragraphs. The POW stands for pick my idea, organize my notes, and write and say more. while the tree stands for your topic sentence, reasons, which we like to have three or more, having our students explain the reasons, and then create an ending or wrap it up with a conclusion. Our thinking routines create a foundation for our students to think critically and to be inquisitive and curious. So we're still looking through that inquiry lens through thinking routines. Two of our best practice thinking routines are See, Think, Wonder and Think, Pair, Share. See, Think, Wonder is a thinking routine or strategy that we typically use with visual literacy. So think images, sculptures, paintings, political cartoons, videos. When you have a moment, scan the QR code and you'll see phenomenal See, Think, Wonder in action. Think, Pair, Share is one of our thinking routines that really promotes academic discourse among students and allows them to learn from each other and to focus on peer-to-peer involvement. One of the great things about our best practices in social studies is that it encourages our students to use various forms of learning, whether that is through images or speeches or videos or paintings or political cartoons. What we love about this is that ELA has also created a similar pathway for teaching, which they call multimodal learning, which, as previously mentioned, that's really what social studies is all about. Multimodal learning, learning through various forms of looking and understanding the world. And so when we present an image to our students, when we present a photograph, when we present a letter, when we present a sculpture, when we present a cartoon, a comic, all of these are multi-modes of learning, and they provide opportunities for our students to make connections and to build prior knowledge. I want to now move into our secondary resources and support. You'll see here a list of our secondary resources that have been purchased by the district. Several of our resources do have online components that you should have access to. Should you have any trouble on getting online or accessing the platforms, please send an email and let me know. I know historically we have had challenges with Gibbs and Smith. And so to mitigate any issues, please, as early as possible, let me know if there are any online programs that are giving us a challenge. In addition to our Arc of Learning and C3 framework, our social studies instructional framework provides an all-encompassing look at how the three-part lesson plan should be taught and the expectations of that lesson plan. When you have a moment, please scan the QR code for quick access to the framework. As I'm sure many of you are aware, the standards as well as other resources developed by the state can be found on Georgia DOE Inspire or inspire.gadoe.org. We can also access our own DCSD social studies curriculum through the curriculum community that is found in Canvas, as well as other updates, resources, and support. Our SharePoint is also another option for accessing a lot of our resources. On the SharePoint, you'll find content updates. You'll be able to access pre-recorded professional learning sessions. This is where we will have most of our information for our academic programs and competitions. We have lessons and activities for each grade level band for our national holidays and observances, our updated social studies newsletters, and we also have high quality instructional resources and materials available. In addition to some of those resources, I do want to point out that readworks.org is a phenomenal instructional resource when we think about finding literacy-rich texts for our students to use. It's a great resource for deciding, what parameters you want to use, whether it's a 11th grade text or a ninth grade text, what lexile you want it on. It also has accompanying question sets if you want to give your students constructed response or multiple choice questions as a formative assessment. Can be used for that as well. But I want to encourage you to use ReadWorks to make sure that we're using that for instructional support when it comes to literacy rich text. Now, with that being said, I also encourage you to use ChatGPT and Magic School AI to help you to develop your own text and question sets. So I'm sure many of you know by now that you can utilize these online resources and tell either one that you would like to create a eighth grade text on Sequoia and Mary Musgrove and James Oglethorpe, and you can place a standard in there and tell them that you want an informational text that is 3 pages long or 5 paragraphs, however long you want it to be. And it'll create that for you. And it'll also create activities, question sets, writing assignments, and even rubrics. You can also have it level the text for you if you need it lowered to another level to differentiate in your classroom. That's available as well. So I would take advantage of these as a way of including more literacy rich text that we want to use in Dimension 2. We need primary and secondary sources. We can use teacher notes that's found in Inspire, but we can also go to Library of Congress or loc.gov or National Archives, which is archives.gov, both of which have an incredible library available for you to select different images, letters, political cartoons, etc. And what I love about both of these sites is that they do have graphic organizers for analyzing each one of those type of multimodal um, realms of learning. So again, whether it's a photo, whether it's a sculpture, a speech, a quote, they have an analysis tool on Library of Congress for each one of those modes of learning. With that being said, I want us to take a moment and view this guidance for local instructional review teams. This was created just to ensure that we are really working as a school team to mitigate any type of issues that we may um, find with certain images or videos or activities that we present to our students. As we know, social studies can often present some sensitive topics, and we just want to make sure that we're being sensitive to our students, to our communities, and to the various cultures that are represented in our district. And so, with that being said, when you do prepare to find a primary or secondary source, or some type of video that you want to show at the beginning, or an image that you want to display, we just want to be mindful. And of course, you'll use your teacher discretion. But if there are some that you're wary about, or you have a gut instinct that says, you know what, I'm not quite sure if this is the most appropriate, it's a great time to get with your local team, which can consist of your grade department chair and your grade level team or your course team. It can also consist of one of your APs, I would include as well. And then also, if you have any questions beyond that, please feel free to reach out to me for any additional guidance on anything that you choose to use that you might be skeptical about. And so again, we just want to make sure that we're using, this to identify the most appropriate resource, image, or activity, because we want to make sure that we're remaining sensitive to our communities and we're eliminating any bias in how we're choosing some of these resources. Moving on to academic programs and competitions. One of our star programs that we have for 6th and 7th grade is Junior Achievement. Your leads will actually be attending a meeting today, and those leads will come forward once the meeting is over and give you A rundown of what to expect with junior achievement. But for those of you that are new, JA Biztown is our sixth grade program, and JA Finance Park is our seventh grade program. And both are outstanding financial literacy simulation programs that are completed at the Georgia World Congress Center. So all sixth and seventh graders will have an opportunity to travel to the Georgia World Congress Center to be a part of this amazing experience where they get firsthand simulation and understanding the ins and outs of economic diversity and personal finance and literacy. National History Day is one of our secondary competitions. We've had some amazing student work that's been produced over the last few years, and some students that have done exceptionally well at nationals, as well as some of our teacher leaders that have been recognized and been given classroom scholarships for the support they have given to their students. So we want to make sure that we're encouraging all of our students and all of our schools to at least submit some nominees um, that will come to the district competition and will present their work and then go on to state, regional, and then the national competition. Our tentative district date is January 28th, followed by a regional, which will be announced coming shortly. And I do want to note that you do have between now and January, so that's quite a bit of time to prepare your students and to get them excited about this competition. The theme for this year, and there's a theme every year that changes, the theme for this year is revolution, reaction, and reform in history. Revolution, Reaction, and Reform in History. And if you go to the National History Day website, they will give a rundown of what they're looking for from this theme, as well as a video that gives more information. Governor's Honors Program is also on the horizon. There will be more information coming soon. I do want to also mention the Civic Engagement Diploma Seal for all of our seniors. It's a seal that a lot of our students are easily able to obtain because so many of them have already fulfilled the majority of the requirements that are needed in order to achieve the seal. So at your leisure, please take some time and look through what the requirements are, meet with their counselors. We've had a big influx in students that received the Civic Engagement Seal this past year, and we're so excited about the teachers that really supported our students in getting this seal on their diploma. And again, it's something that's achievable really for all of our students. So we want to encourage all of you to get them thinking about this even on the first day of school. We will have upcoming secondary dates that will be sent soon. This includes professional learning on a lot of what we talked about today, as well as department chair meetings for our chairs that will be held every single month. We will have a department chair meeting every month, and so all of our teachers can look forward to receiving updates and information from their department chairs. Speaking of department chairs, I want you to take a moment and just look at a few of your responsibilities and just know that you really are the liaison between our district and your school building. And so we appreciate all of your work, and I know your teachers and teams really appreciate you all leading and providing updates, curriculum updates, as well as just any type of correspondence that we have that needs to get to the school. And I love this quote. It says, keep calm and let social studies teachers handle it. Because really and truly, social studies teachers do it all. We provide students with engagement. We make sure that students are prepared for their lives ahead through learning about economy, to learning the history, to learning about how to be a civic citizen and perform their duties such as voting, etc. We do it all. And on top of that, we have this great opportunity to provide literacy rich instruction and improve our students' reading and growth. achievement. So kudos to you all, and just know how important and valuable your work is and what you do every day is creating impact and truly making a difference. And with that, you all, I want to say thank you so much for being here. I am Dr. Victoria Anderson, your K-12 Social Studies Senior Coordinator. There's my email below. Please email me at any time. Feel free to ask questions for clarity or reach out if you need any support. There is one more slide that will have a survey following this one. Please complete the survey just kind of as your record of attendance. Um, and again, I just want to say I appreciate you all so much for all that you do. Want to just briefly remind you that it's important to take care of yourselves. It's the beginning of the year, and we typically start out strong, and then, we all kind of get busy and start falling off a little bit of certain wellness routines. So, this is just your friendly reminder to start your routine out strong, whether that's making sure that you're hydrated during the day and have your water ready, or you have a healthy breakfast, or a lunch that's ready to go, or even something as simple as making sure that meals are prepped for the week so you don't have to think about that when you get home and you can kind of unwind a little bit. And also just making sure that you're moving, right? Walking a lot or getting yourself into yoga through a YouTube video, just something that is for you for self-care and for wellness, because it's so important because we pour so much into our students, into our teams, and our schools, and of course, we have our families and friends as well. So just want to bring out that H pride in terms of our humanization and just remind you just to take care of yourself, not just now, not just in the hustle and bustle of the beginning of the year, but throughout the entire year, and help each other out and staying accountable for those things. And maybe even think about setting a goal as a team, to remind each other of certain things you want to stay on track with this year. Happy New Year, y'all. Wish everyone the best. Again, I'm here for support, and thank you for all you do. Take care, and we'll talk soon.